Welcome one, welcome all into another show where we will talk about college football, the Big 12, everything happening in the sports. I am your host, John Kurtz, and today our friends in Ames and our friends in Provo continue to get, I won't say no respect, but I will say less respect than they probably deserve. And we have an incredible submission from a both reader of the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com, or click the link in the description to subscribe, and a listener of the show who submitted a great hypothetical scenario that I think underscores a lot of this, or at least offers us an opportunity, kind of a launching pad to talk about what's happening right now with BYU and Iowa State from a national perspective. I want to talk some Texas Tech today as well, all right? I always mention this at the top of the show, but if you are new to the channel, we're talking about everything that affects college football. Later on, there will be a big bit on Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, what's going on with the SEC and the Big Ten right now, because they had a big meeting since I last spoke to all of you guys. But this show does originate from Big 12 country. And Texas Tech is a team that actually I want to talk about because of something I read from a national perspective. It was a story on Yahoo Sports that was talking about one-loss teams that still have a shot at the playoff, and I was surprised at where Texas Tech checked in on that. As I mentioned, Lord Sankey, Darth Sankey, and Tony Petitti both met along with their athletic directors in Nashville earlier this week, and the tone coming out of it, if you read Ross Dellinger, is basically, we're calling the shots. I'm the captain now. For those of you who will understand that movie reference, that's basically what's going on with the Big Ten and the SEC. So what does that mean for everybody else? We will chat about all of that. We've got some Big 12 TV numbers. Cam Rising is out for the season, and I've got some bad news on what that means for Utah fans. I actually think that could be good in the short term, but in the long term, what it says about Utah's program, I do have a message for Ute fans later on, which I'm sure will be popular with Ryan, who was very active and first in the chat tonight. So thank you for that, Ryan. Ryan says Utah fans are and always will be the worst. Go BYU. Well, we know, those of us that have been around here for the past, year and a half since all the flirtation with the Pac-12 started, there have been a lot of butting of heads between Utah fans and the rest of the Big 12. I'm trying not to generalize too much, but it's like everything you see does kind of make you chuckle. There was a message board genius post this week on Twitter of a Utah fan still calling the Big 12 the Mountain West and that they deserve to be in the Big 10 and blah, 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 blah. You still get some of that. I know it's not all of you Utah fans, but I do hope that you'll listen later on. I have a lot of respect for the Utah program. Fan base, it's been rocky. It's been rocky. But that's what I have for you guys tonight on the outline. You know how you can be a part of the show. Much like Ryan, much like Daniel, who I'm seeing checking in here as well with a super chat. Daniel, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you as always. Your support of the channel. Saw you popping in with some good tweets earlier today as well. So thank you for that, Daniel. If you want to support the channel like Daniel, like Ryan, and make sure that your question or comment gets on the show tonight, you can do so by clicking the $ below the chat box. That is how you attach a donation to your chat. It makes it a super chat, which will ensure that it gets on the show tonight. Also, just a great way to support the work that I'm doing here on the channel. But there are plenty of free ways to do that as well. One of those being simply liking the video. That is great. That helps. Continue to just comment, even if you're not super chatting. Comment, fill up the comments here tonight. I did ban somebody last time, so hopefully that'll cut out some of the riffraff. My apologies on that. Anyway, happened to look at it as I was getting off, so we'll try not to have any nonsense going on there. The other way you can really support, and it is a huge way to show your support right now, if you enjoy the content that I am doing here, if you are a Big 12 fan that wants your college football and college basketball news without Big 10 or SEC bias, me cutting through and just giving you what you need to know as a Big 12 fan, subscribe to my Big 12 newsletter, Open for Business. You can do so at ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com to subscribe to Open for Business. Get it to your inbox multiple times per week, and it will come there totally free of charge. So I'd appreciate it if you guys do that. We've got 2,500 plus Big 12 fans now reading Open for Business. I'm about to send out a new one in the morning with some power rankings. So if you're into Big 12 power rankings, that is what is coming your way tomorrow morning. All right, Daniel, thank you once again. The other way, if you are not watching this live and you still want to be in touch with the show, be a part of the conversation, you can do so on Venmo. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo to do that. If you leave a question or comment there, I will read it to kick off the next show. And that's where we got my guy, Joshua. Joshua, I appreciate you, man. Pretty simple message here from Joshua. He says, howdy, John. All I have to say on your next live show is go Cougs. And that is Cougs. So BYU fan here. He says, thanks for following me on Twitter or X or whatever it is. Hey, my pleasure, Joshua. And thank you for your support of the channel, my friend. I appreciate it as always. John-Kurtz-4 again on Venmo if you want to be like Joshua. And the Cougs are kind of the topic du jour right now, man. The people can't get enough BYU and Big 12 country, and they warrant plenty of conversation, much like from my guy Mark. Mark, hey, I'm a Utah fan. He's talking to Ryan from earlier, right? Says, I'm a Utah fan, but I'm also a BYU fan. Where does that leave me? Ooh, boy. Where does that leave Mark? I am very curious about that. Let us know, Ryan. Let us know where exactly that leaves you. Mark, thank you so much. I appreciate your support as always. I'm also reading here, Mark. I'm sorry. I'm seeing people on the Twitter stream saying that it's like frozen or buffering. And that appears to be reflected a bit in some of the numbers here. So I apologize, Twitter folks, if the stream is not working well there. I don't know. On my end, it's not showing me anything is wrong. So I hope it is okay. All right, Mark, for the BYU fan in you, that's where we're going to start. I will get to the Cam Rising and Utah take later on in the show. But there was a different Mark, actually, who gave me a scenario that I'm going to use to kick off the show here. So when we think about the college football playoff, obviously in Big 12 country, BYU, Iowa State come to mind first. They are still not getting enough respect nationally. More on that in just a moment. But to kind of answer the question, get a gauge on where everybody thinks the respect level is going to be nationally for BYU and Iowa State, I thought this hypothetical from reader/listener Mark. I'm going to do that, Mark. I'm not putting your last name out there. If you want me to, I guess follow up and let me know. But I'm just going with Mark here. So he wrote me a nice note and he said, hey, why don't you talk about like what the best case scenario is for the Big 12 as it relates to not just the playoff, but in the broader context, the league's prestige at the end of the year. Like what will be the most beneficial scenario to play out this year for the league? And he mentioned, all right, step one, BYU wins out and makes the Big 12 championship game. All right, they're 6-0. They're halfway there. BYU wins out and gets to the Big 12 championship game. Step two, Iowa State and K-State both went out until Farmageddon. All right. Iowa State and K-State both went out until Farmageddon at the end of the year. I think that is on the table. I would not predict it in all likelihood. You got to make it to November 30th to get there. K-State's got at West Virginia this week, which will be tricky. Then Kansas, at Houston, Arizona State, Cincinnati. It does get, and so because of the home games, and K-State's been such a different team at home, they've got 3 of 4 at home there. If you can get by West Virginia, and then you go to Ames, it's doable. I don't know that I would say likely. For Iowa State, UCF, Texas Tech. Texas Tech will be a showdown at Kansas, Cincinnati, at Utah, K-State. We'll see what Utah is by the time that game is actually played. Maybe they really get rolling with Isaac Wilson and it will look more difficult than it does at the moment. Either way, that is what would have to happen for both of those teams to get there. So BYU wins out. Iowa State and K-State went out until Farmageddon. And then potentially you've got all 3 in the top 10. It's a BYU K-State Big 12 title game if K-State beats Iowa State. That's the next part in this. K-State wins Farmageddon, gives Iowa State their first loss. So now you've got at the end of the year, 12-0 BYU, 11-1 K-State, 11-1 Iowa State. And by virtue of the head-to-head tiebreaker there, assuming that Texas Tech is not in here somewhere, by virtue of a head-to-head tiebreaker there, K-State in the Big 12 championship game, K-State beats BYU in the Big 12 championship game. And so now at the end of the year, you have 12-1 K-State, Big 12 champs. They would get the auto bid, which you would presume to be at that point the 4 seed and not being usurped by Boise. And then you would have 11-1 Iowa State and 12-1 Big 12 championship game loser BYU. And so the question Mark was asking at that point is, do 3 Big 12 teams get into the playoff? Now, I appreciate Mark's advocacy for the conference for sure. And depending on what has happened in other leagues, you certainly might have an argument there. Would have to see the metrics. So much of it would be contingent on what's happening with the other leagues. But I am saying all of that just to drop the bomb that, Mark, I love the scenario. I love the enthusiasm. There's no way. And I'm not saying they shouldn't get 3 in, but there is 0 chance of that happening. There is unequivocally no chance, no shot that the Big 12 is getting 3 teams into a college football playoff anytime soon or possibly ever. I guess maybe if it expands to 14, we could be talking about it then. I do not think the Big 12 is getting 3 into a 12-team playoff. I don't think the ACC is getting 3 ever into a 12-team playoff either, by the way. This thing was set up to prop up the Big 10 and the SEC. And as we're going to learn later on in the show, everything is being controlled by them here at this moment. I don't expect that to be any kind of realistic scenario for the Big 12, unfortunately. I think the real question would be in that scenario, can the Big 12 get 2 teams in? The question becomes, is that the scenario then where the Big 12 could get multiple teams in? And the bad news for Iowa State is going to be, in this hypothetical scenario, I do not think that they are getting in at 11-1. I think BYU has a couple of advantages there. They have a nice SMU win, which certainly appears to be aging well. Now, maybe Iowa will continue to win and get better and better and will age well enough to the point that that makes a real difference for Iowa State's resume as well. But I think the unbeaten regular season and kind of the 2022 TCU effect, right? If everybody watches BYU continue to win games and go undefeated, there will be more and more conversation about them, as you're seeing now, increasing levels of conversation about BYU and Iowa State. And then eventually that will win the day. BYU right now, though, is not getting that level of respect. For instance, I think a lot of it is because, like, computers may not really like them all that much. Josh Pate, who does his JP poll, which is a power rating, not a ranking, so who would win on a neutral field, that's what it's based on. They are not in the top 25. Like, BYU is not in the top 25 there. So I think what his computer would be telling you is perhaps there has been some fortune. We have seen this before, like with the K-State game, the success rate did not indicate that BYU won the game. Turnovers playing a large factor and all that. Now, I think the more and more we watch BYU, it's kind of unfair to do that to them because they basically used the same blueprint to just mollywomp Arizona this past Saturday. But that is a reality for right now. I think, however, if they keep winning games and go on this like Max Duggan-esque 2022 TCU run, get to the Big 12 championship game, lose what I would presume to be a close game against K-State there, they would certainly have the upper hand over Iowa State in that scenario. I think there's a chance. Maybe a decent chance, that in that scenario, the Big 12 could get 2 in. I think that's the real conversation right there. All right, I'm seeing LFG. Iowa State strength of schedule 37, BYU 32 as of right now. So, Mark, I really appreciate the scenario. It's a great thought exercise in how this would happen. There might even be, though, a scenario or a result of this scenario where the Big 12 only gets 1. Just prepare yourself for that. I advocate for the league, and I try to do a lot of that here on this channel and on this show when we're talking Big 12. But man, it's very possible. We know what this thing's about. It's very, very possible that you're going to see just a flood of 2 or 3 loss Big Ten and SEC teams that get in over even a 1-loss non-Big 12 champion. I would prepare yourself for that. I guess we don't totally know how the committee is going to react to this, and there is talk that the Big Ten and SEC, part of what they have discussed is getting rid of a committee entirely. And so maybe because of that, they're fearful that something like this would result in more Big 12 teams getting in. But I don't know. I don't see it. And you could even, one thing that came to my mind, something that will scar Big 12 fans, is thinking about 2014. Remember, 2014, we had Baylor TCU battling it out for the college football playoff. This in the one true champion era. It was our one true champion era of Big 12 football. And it was almost like, hey, you've got both of these teams here. They both have 1 loss. They're both claiming that they should be the one that gets in, but basically they canceled each other out. Like there was an element of those two canceling each other out, and then bam, you've got nobody in the playoff. And Ohio State sneaks in. Ohio State goes on to win the championship. I think that scenario would be very much on the table. So probably more likely, well, I would say more likely there easily that the Big 12 gets 1 instead of 3, even in that scenario, with a decent chance at 2. That's how I would paint it. But if you want to be a little bit more aware of the type of thing that like a BYU or an Iowa State would be up against, let me share this as Exhibit A from Wide Right and Natty Light, Iowa State fan site. You can read this blurb on Iowa State from ESPN. Very negative. Now, I know someone just said Iowa State strength of schedule 37. LFG did. They are here placing Iowa State strength of schedule at 76 in the country, and points out doesn't have any wins against ranked opponents. They say they need K-State to stay ranked. They don't have much margin for error if they don't win the Big 12. They better have the help of K-State to compensate for it. And so it's not an overwhelmingly glowing positive review for Iowa State and where they're at right now, harping on the schedule, not having anybody ranked there, not mentioning the win at Iowa, which had Iowa State lost that game, Iowa would be ranked right now. The irony. But compare that to Notre Dame, how Notre Dame is handled here. Notre Dame still has the worst loss for playoff contenders at home to Northern Illinois, but still has wins at Texas A&M, at Purdue, and against Louisville. It also helps that Notre Dame, but still has wins at Texas A&M, at Purdue, parentheses, which just pushed Illinois to overtime, and against Louisville. Okay, which just pushed Illinois to overtime. We are propping up the worst Power 5 team in college football right now, Power 2 Purdue. The worst Power 5 team that is out there right now is being heralded as like, hey, that's actually a halfway decent win for Notre Dame because Purdue just pushed Illinois to overtime. Like, get the hell out of here. There is not much worse of an example of just catering to the brand than doing that right there for Notre Dame. The Purdue game belongs nowhere near anything here in the playoff discussion. The only thing that matters from that game is that Notre Dame did not lose it to be a bad loss. That is it. And so that's the kind of benefit of the doubt you'll get even as a Notre Dame team that lost at home to somebody from the MAC. And meanwhile, Iowa State, which keeps winning, won on the road at a Big Ten team that was ranked at the time until they took care of them. For Iowa State, it's, well, they're kind of helpless. They've got this crappy schedule, and they better hope that K-State stays ranked or else they are going to be in some trouble. That's what Iowa State is up against. And it's a microcosm of what the Big 12 and Big 12 schools are up against in general. Oh, boy, keep chopping. Purdue is solid now. I don't know. I don't know. Because Purdue is solid now. I mean, is this... I don't know why I just got duped into doing this. Loss 66-7 to Notre Dame. Loss 38-21 at Oregon State. lost 28-10 to Nebraska, lost 52-6 to Wisconsin. They allowed Wisconsin, identityless Wisconsin, to score 52 points, like transitioning from power running team to spread it out under Luke Fickell. They can't figure out what they are. They have been mediocre at best for half a decade now. They gave up 52 points to Wisconsin, and then, yes, did lose at Illinois. I will not accept that. I appreciate you, Keep Chopping. Thank you for being here. That ain't it. I don't care if they have a new quarterback or what. That ain't it for me. And by the way, when did Notre Dame play them? It was the second week of the season. So not with the new QB, even if we are going to grant that credit there to Purdue for being better. So my point stands here. This is what you're up against if you are the league right now in a fight for respect. And I bring up the Josh Pate, the JP poll, because a lot of power ratings I don't think are going to look very favorably upon BYU as we go throughout this whole process. So, unfortunately, the scenario here, the thing to do is just win, baby. It's Al Davis. It's just win, baby. You just got to keep winning. There's nothing else you can do besides just keep winning. One other scenario I would point out, because it parlays straight into the Texas Tech conversation, but this was shared to me by Jordan on Twitter, who says, here's another much more unlikely scenario that is similar. So BYU wins out, K-State wins out, and Texas Tech wins out. So Tech would be 11-1. That would mean that they win in Ames, which would be a massive win and likely a win over a top 10 team at that point in time. BYU would be unbeaten. They could even lose one in this scenario that Jordan lays out. And then it's BYU, Texas Tech, and Arlington. Winner is in. Does 11-1 K-State make it? So that'd be 11-1 K-State with a win in Ames at Iowa State. At that point, the Clones would have a couple of losses. I don't know. That I would still doubt it. I think it's less likely than more likely, but possible. And K-State, I think, has enough cachet built up from the last few years and preseason expectations and the Avery Johnson hype that it probably helps them a bit over a school like Iowa State in the previous scenario. Even though, Iowa State has had a better start to the year, K-State has been a little bit more top of mind on the national landscape, in the course of the national landscape over the last few years. Played some really high-profile games last year. Didn't get over the hump to make the Big 12 championship game, but we're in that conversation. Preseason top 25 last year, ranked for a good chunk of the year, won the Big 12 in 2022. It's just a little more top of mind, I think, whereas Matt Campbell had a bit of a dip before beginning the resurgence last year and now really on the come up this year. I don't think that the Big 12 would get two in there. I think you'd be looking at the winner, but that could very well be Texas Tech. That absolutely could be Texas Tech that wins the Big 12. And so here's the conversation about the Red Raiders. I will admit I have a hang up here, but it's probably not an entirely fair one for this Texas Tech squad. So let's look at Tech right now. They are, so Yahoo Sports, I'm reading this Yahoo Sports article, and I was not expecting this. It was an article about the 20 teams that have a loss, at least a loss, so far this year, that are still in the hunt for the college football playoff, which, if you are somebody that advocates for the expanded playoff, this is one of the biggest selling points, that you're keeping more teams like that still engaged and still a part of the conversation this late in the year. Texas Tech is one of those teams. But as I'm reading down, I saw that they said 3 Big 12 teams would be mentioned. I thought, okay, so I was expecting to see K-State first. I did not. There's only one team in the category that says still a shot. The next category down was like still a shot but needs help. K-State and Arizona State were in that category. Colorado was even in another category beyond that. That was like crazier things have happened. But Texas Tech was the one team that was just in the still has a shot category. And the logic there was basically look at Texas Tech's schedule, and they're still unbeaten right now in conference play. And they're definitely not getting third run right now when it comes to the conversation, or even first or second. If you want to argue that, hey, they haven't lost a game in conference, they should be directly in the same conversation as a BYU or an Iowa State. I could understand Texas Tech fans making that case. And I mean, anytime I tweet anything about Iowa State or BYU, I hear about it from Tech fans in the mentions. So I know you guys are very much there and very much paying attention to that. So my question is, like, are we not paying enough attention right now to Joey McGuire's squad and what they're doing? I mean, really, the biggest thing is just looking at their schedule this year. If you want to realize why they're probably going to hang around and still be in this thing for a while, because they are 3-0 in the Big 12, wins at home over Arizona State and Cincinnati, which are aging better and better. Those two teams are a combined 9-3. They win at Arizona, and that's a game where it took a late fumble to make it happen, but they were in control for most of that game. Arizona, I don't think, is very good, but it's a road win. You're not going to apologize for that. Well, the next two games for Texas Tech are Baylor and at TCU. They've got Baylor at home on Saturday and then at TCU. And I mean, I don't know if you've been paying attention to Baylor and TCU, a once proud rivalry and a once proud couple of teams that we just talked about earlier in the show were competing for the playoff. That's not the case this year. I mean, Tech should win both of those games, and they would then be at 7-1 heading to Iowa State on November 2nd, a game that I don't know that anybody at all really had circled at the beginning of the year as like, hey, this could be one of the biggest games in the conference. November 2nd, Texas Tech at Iowa State. Get ready for that game. That could be a monster game if Texas Tech is 7-1 and 5-0 in the Big 12 at that point. After that, they have a home game with Colorado. They're at Oklahoma State and a home game with West Virginia. I think those games are manageable enough. I still think that could get tricky. Oklahoma State, I don't really think that one will be so much, but Colorado would definitely be capable. And Texas Tech has had issues on defense throughout the year. Colorado is capable of taking advantage of that. West Virginia, maybe just a capable enough team overall. I don't feel as great about them in Lubbock, particularly if something big is on the line in that game. But you get the point. Like, that's a doable schedule for Joey McGuire and company. And they do have an excellent offense right now. I mean, Taj Brooks is Taj Brooks. He's just doing Taj Brooks things. I think he's got a great claim to be the number one running back of the conference. DJ Giddens might have something to say about that right now. Cam Scadaboo would probably have something to say about that right now. But I tell you what, you combine that with a much better Baron Morton than I expected this year, and Tech's got a really dangerous thing going on offense. I believe Baron Morton's TD to INT right now is 14-2. So I had my doubts about the ceiling of Morton as a quarterback. So far this year, it looks like he is shutting me up. He is proving me wrong there. The problem is, the other shoe for me is, one, the defense. I mean, I definitely still do have some concerns about the defense, but beyond that, it's just the history. And that, I think, is what's really working against Tech here and why you're not seeing more conversation generated about them right now. It also probably doesn't help that the first 2 weeks were that bad. Not only did they lose badly at Washington State, but they also damn near lost to Abilene Christian. 2-point conversion away from losing at home to Abilene Christian, gave up over 50 points. So it was easy to write them off. But Tech's history, Tech fans, I tell you guys a lot. I've had many an interaction with Texas Tech fans on Twitter where, inevitably in the offseason, Tech fans have kind of had this life cycle for the last, since 2009 of like really fired up in the offseason. They'll inevitably get some talent because they typically do, and they've got great resources there, and hype it up. We're excited. We're awesome. Why aren't you giving us more respect? Why aren't you giving us more respect? And then season starts, and then like very much self-loathing because of the way the season actually happens. I've seen that pattern repeat itself a bunch of times, and it started again this year. But now with Tech winning games, it's coming back around to the beating your chest part of it, which I get it. You should be fired up. But I do also remember very distinctly in my mind a 7-0 Texas Tech start in 2013 with Cliff Kingsbury at the helm as the head coach, and it ended 1-5, and they finished with an 8-5 record, and there still has not been a 9-win season since 2009. It's just a lot of history that would suggest the other shoe is about to drop here at some point for Texas Tech. That is not totally fair to Joey McGuire. That is not totally fair, really, to Taj Brooks or Baron Morton, even though they've been around for a number of these 6, 7, 8 win seasons, which is just where Tech has been kind of trapped, like in football purgatory, basically, since Mike Leach left in 2009. So I will admit that there is some definite hesitation for me. That is a hang up for me, just because I have seen it so many times. I'm very tempered with enthusiasm for them. But Tech has put themselves in position. No doubt about that. Put themselves in position to be in the conversation and to actually break through this year. So I wanted to make sure that Texas Tech gets its due respect and run there, because I do think it's fair to say they're very much playing fourth fiddle right now in the Big 12 conversation. I think after K-State's win over Colorado, and because there was so much preseason chatter about K-State and Avery Johnson, K-State is still getting third billing behind the two unbeatens, overall unbeatens this season, right? At the top of the Big 12. So my thoughts, Tech deserves a little conversation here today. Matthew is telling Mark, who was the BYU-Utah combo fan, that there's lots of room, so welcome aboard. Hey, thank you for the hospitality there, Matthew. Love to see it. Papa Bravo. What's up, Papa Bravo? Okay. This is good, Papa Bravo. Your take on the Big Ten SEC scheduling agreement. How many rivalry games will get cannibalized because of it? Let me hang on to that, Papa Bravo. I'm going to come back to it because that is where I am going next. Matthew, upsets of the week: Louisville over Miami and Georgia Tech over Notre Dame. Well, I would love to see Georgia Tech over Notre Dame, especially considering the paragraph that I just read you, giving them credit for beating Purdue. Intriguing matchup of the week: Alabama, Tennessee. Yeah, somebody getting knocked out of the SEC race. That will be. Neither of those teams have played very well the last couple of weeks at all. So somebody's going to have to turn it around. Either that, or I guess we just get a really gross game between Bama and Tennessee. Louisville over Miami, I could see, but I have cooled a bit on Louisville, and I know they have played like 5 or 6 games in a row. Miami is coming off of a bye. Last few weeks have been losses, not as good for Louisville. So I'm a little hesitant, but they are at home getting points against a Miami team that should have lost its last 2 games. So I could definitely see that. Appreciate you, Matthew. Thank you for weighing in. All right, so Papa Bravo asked about the Big Ten SEC scheduling agreement. And man, next on the docket here is what is going on between the SEC and the Big Ten. There's already been talk about the automatic playoff bids, but the general big picture here is that more is going on than just that. You kind of have two evil geniuses in Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti meeting to take over the world here and just bend everybody else in the college sports world to their will. There are a lot of ways in which this is happening. We're going to tell you about those here from Ross Dellinger, courtesy of Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports. Just going to read to you from his article this week. He says, Sankey and Petitti assured the country that no, their conferences are not planning to separate from the rest of college athletics. So for now, they are not. I would offer that caveat. For now, they are not, because much with like anything, just a little bit realignment related, it's not happening until it's happening. You'll say no, you'll deny until you actually want to do it, and then it doesn't matter. There's no recourse at all. Sankey and Petitti sharply criticized several outside proposals that would reshape college athletics. They don't like any of the Super League stuff, whether it's College Sports Tomorrow, whether it was the more recent one that seemed to be more palatable, had more momentum from folks inside the SEC and the Big Ten. Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are still not having any of that right now. Petitti would later go on to say, basically, they're just telling us to play more high-profile games. We can do that without getting private equity involved. We can do that without some 70-team Super League that's going to help everybody else. And therein lies the problem for those of us that are in Big 12 or ACC country. Dellinger says they will wait until after the completion of this year's inaugural expanded college football playoff before making real decisions on playoff format, scheduling, partnerships, and postseason bowls. So with that, back to the scenario we were talking about earlier. If you had 12-0 BYU or 12-1 BYU, 12-1 K-State, 11-1 Iowa State, how many Big 12 teams are getting in? Again, I think it's more likely 1 than 3 and possibly 2. But if somehow you did get 2 or 3 out of that scenario into the playoff, that's when you'd probably see a bigger push from the SEC to change to more auto bids for their league. They want assurances that they will get a bunch of teams in so that they can then go play more schools from the opposite league, whether that's the SEC or the Big Ten, in their non-conference schedule to juice up their TV deal. They want to be able to do that to make more money, but they don't want to do that at the expense of having less teams in the playoff. So if 3 one-loss teams from the Big 12 are getting in, there will be some changes. Something will change. Heads will roll from Sankey and Petiti, and that is a part of waiting to see what happens here. Dellinger, though, says what was left unsaid is perhaps more jarring than anything said. Put simply, the SEC and Big Ten plan to reshape college athletics. They are the drivers of the car now, the operators of the machinery, the captains of the ship. So again, say it with me. Greg Sankey just hijacked your boat. He ran up on you and he pointed at you and said, "Look at me. I'm the captain now." That's what's going on here with Lord Sankey. We all basically knew this, but the more these meetings happen, the more they continue to give press conferences talking about these issues. And you hear them talk, it becomes more and more obvious, like where this is going, what is happening, and how powerless really everybody else is to stop it. It is one of those things that it's like logically you can know this, but it's a lot different when you start seeing it in front of your face playing out and actually happening and going down the way that it is. And you're going to continue to see more and more of that. For the most part, they, being Sankey and Petiti, believe they are in control of the future playoff format, not the other 8 FBS leagues. They will oversee the implementation of a new enforcement model under the impending revenue sharing concept, not the NCAA. That may be one that's a little bit jarring and surprising to folks. Forget the NCAA being who is going to adjudicate NIL and, figure out if deals are above board, whatever that will ultimately wind up meaning, and trying to actually put in whatever guardrails, quote unquote, are going to be there with that. It will not be the NCAA doing it. According to Dellinger here, that will be the SEC and Big Ten making that decision. So get ready for that. Instead of the NCAA ruling over everything, it's going to be much more like the Big Ten and the SEC rule over everything. Joy. Great for everybody. If you are a Bowl fan, close your ears for a moment. If you are still a fan clinging to a love of the college football bowl system, you definitely need to close your ears. They could, most believe they will, overhaul the way in which their schools participate in the postseason. Bowls with a question mark. Could be bad news for the Bowls. We will see. At least major changes with the Bowls. Something that is on the table here, potentially for the SEC and Big Ten. Dellinger says, but it is clear what the end of the road is. A guarantee for more spots in the playoff, multiple automatic qualifiers per league maybe, which permits them to play tougher regular season schedules, presumably against one another. And there was other reporting, like Dennis Dodd had said, that they are talking about a scheduling agreement between the two, not just in football, but also in basketball. So, okay, knock yourself out. It would do you some good for your TV deal to play Big 12 basketball schools, but I digress. And paves the way for perhaps a conference play-in tournament into the college football playoff at the end of the regular season. Interesting idea there. I know that I've even heard that idea kicked around in Big 12 circles a little bit from the respect of like last weekend of the regular season could be flexed and you match up, team 1 gets a bye. They're in the championship game. 2 plays 3, 4 plays 5, and on down the line. You could try to do something like that. That's at least something that has been discussed. Of course, all of that generates more revenue for schools at a time when admins are clawing for cash in the age of revenue sharing. And what a bowl games. Oh, I'm sorry. Bowl fans, again, close your ears. This one's even worse. So anybody who's a fan of the college football bowl system and bowl games, please close your ears now. And what a bowl games it remains uncertain. But as one leader told Yahoo Sports recently, quote, the days of losing money by playing in bowl games are over. The days of losing money by playing in bowl games are over. Yeah, poor bowls, man. I can still remember as a kid how big a deal it was when, hey, BYU fans, K-State made a New Year's Day bowl in 1996 to take on BYU in the Cotton Bowl. We're not there anymore. All right, so back to Papa Bravo's question. What's your take on the Big Ten SEC scheduling agreement? It's lame. It's lame. I mean, I understand why they're doing it. I understand how this whole idea is set up to, like, they want playoff assurances so they can go out and play more interesting non-conference games. And in general, if that were much more equitable across the leagues, that would be a great thing for everybody. But it's not if it's going to end up with less games happening between Big 12 ACC schools and the Big 10 and SEC. Nobody wants or needs that, because you make a good point there, Papa Bravo. Will that start hurting rivalry games? Iowa State, Clemson, South Carolina, Florida State, I guess, for the time being. Like, will we start to lose more of those games? Or we've lost enough. Like, they've taken enough from us already. Why do we need to do even more of that? From a rivalry standpoint, hell, I just saw a video come across my Twitter timeline that was somebody playing NCAA 2003, and it was Oklahoma, Nebraska, and the broadcast in the game was hyping up how much of a rivalry it was. And I'm like, God, like, I mean, there's another one that I don't even think about anymore, but it's one that we lost in conference realignment that was one of the best rivalries in college football. Over the course of college football history, that is one of the best rivalries that's ever existed. Now it's so far in the past that we don't even think about it anymore. So we don't need to be losing more of that. I definitely think it could be affected. I don't 100% know. It would just, unfortunately, it would come down to how much do the Big Ten schools care? How much do they really care about it? Like, does Iowa care about keeping the Cyhawk going if they are going to have one of these scheduling agreements? And the broader point here is that it's just a way to rig the system. It's a way to, honestly, it's like, I feel like it's very politically minded, you know, the same way that in politics, either side would try to manipulate the system or little advantages that they have, you know. That's the same deal here. Hey, we've got some power, so let's go ahead and make sure that we get as many spots in the playoff as we can, which will allow us to then play each other more, lock them out, dominate strength of schedule, which will help accentuate our playoff chances more anyway, and just give us more money on our TV deal, and then less money that any of them could get by using our schools as a part of their TV package in the non-con to make more money. So we'll get further ahead in money, further ahead in playoff appearances, which of course leads to more money. And we'll be able to play each other more and have more exciting games, which of course leads to more money. Yeah, it's just it's a way for them to rig the system and leverage their advantage as much as they possibly can. It's lame and it sucks. It's lame and it sucks, Papa Bravo. That's unfortunately the best I can give you. Ryan, if the SEC and Big Ten want to break away, yank their tax-exempt status and tax the distributions to their members, want to be big business, get taxed like it. I will admit, this is one of those I tell you guys every once in a while, like that feels over my head as to whether or not that could actually happen. I do not know, but I still do think it's very possible at some point the Big Ten and the SEC do just go off and do their own thing. It does not seem like it's something that's going to happen in the next couple of years, but it very well could happen. That would certainly cause a lot of problems. That would cause a ton of problems. I guess my question would be then, does it still come back down around to everybody else because you're still running basically the same business model, just not at as high of a level, right? So I don't know. Again, I may be talking about out my you-know-what with that, Ryan. That's above my pay grade, but very interesting point to bring up. So appreciate you, man. If you guys want to be a part of the show, click the $ below the chat box in order to do that. That's how you can guarantee that you make it on the show tonight, like Ryan, like Matthew, like Papa Bravo. Click the $sign below the chat box in order to do that. If you're not watching live, John-Kurtz-4 is a way you can do that as well. And Big 12 fans, make sure one way you can support me that is totally free, and I would much appreciate, is subscribing to my Big 12 newsletter. If you want Big 12 news with no Big 10 or SEC bias. You want your college football, your college basketball news, just parsed down to how it relates to the Big 12, what it means for the league you care about. Subscribe to Open for Business. You'll get it to your inbox 2 to 3 days per week, totally for free. It's ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com to get signed up. You can also click the link in the description of the video. 2,500 plus Big 12 fans already signed up, already reading Open for Business. Would love to have you join me in that endeavor as well. Let's see. Oh, we got Michael. We got Michael in the house. What's up, Michael? Great to see you, my friend. Michael says they already get benefits. Notre Dame loses to NIU, Northern Illinois, and are top 10. If BYU loses to any Big 12 team, they drop to the 20s or out of the top 25 as a fraud. Screw the SEC. Yeah, you're not wrong. Like, let's look at, I was going to take a look like BYU's schedule here. And we could kind of hypothesize what each loss would do to them. I mean, certainly if you lose to Oklahoma State with the way the Cowboys have played this year, you're going to be, you probably are in the 20s. Yeah. At UCF, you might get a little bit more leeway on that one. At Utah, you would probably get a little bit more leeway on that one, but we're talking low teens if that's the first loss. Kansas would definitely hurt. At Arizona State, maybe low teens. Houston, that one would definitely hurt too. But your point is taken. You would plummet, Meanwhile, you had schools like Oklahoma was still at like 18 last week before Texas just completely decleated and exposed them. But they had already been exposed. Like, they win that game at Auburn and it's like people are stuff. They had no offense. That was not a good team. It was not a good team with Jackson Arnold. It's not a good team with Michael Hawkins. And Oklahoma gets the brand value push there. So you're right, Michael. You are totally right about that. Well, the good news is with all these problems facing the Big 12, the league is not going to lose its commissioner in the near term. It would certainly appear, but I will admit, we've talked about this with Brett Yormark many times before. There is going to come a time where people will pursue him. Like, he's done such a good job in taking this league from where it was at to where it is now and just improving the profile of it, fighting for it, winning major battles, like getting the four corner schools, continuing to be innovative and just be the right type of leader for the situation. The type of guy that can really meet the moment here with everything that's happening in college athletics, especially when you pair that with the rest of his resume, a guy that oversaw major positive changes at NASCAR. He was able to move the New Jersey Nets to Brooklyn and become the Brooklyn Nets. He has a lot of very impressive things on the resume. And so he's going to be a hot commodity. And the more that the Big 12 does have success and does compete, that will get hotter and hotter. He will become even more and more of a commodity. And here we have this from Sports Business Journal. They did a story about Live Golf, and I guess it's Greg Norman who's in charge of Live Golf. Who knew? I am in no way a golf guy at all. I had no idea. But Sports Business Journal reported that the search firm that Live Golf hired has been working on this for months, and one of the people it contacted was Brett Yormark, trying to get him to run Live Golf. But reached by Sports Illustrated, Yormark said the call, quote, lasted about 5 minutes because he is not interested in moving on from his current position. There was another report, and I saw people making fun of that one. Like, okay, great. Brett Yormark's agent trying to get him in the news. Because that one didn't quote Yormark directly. It cited a source close to Yormark that said the call lasted a minute. So I guess it's up for debate whether or not that you think that call lasted 1 minute or 5. The point being emphasized by the Big 12 there is that it did not last long because Yormark doesn't want to leave. So however skeptical you might be about the general sentiment, it does show you Yormark is a wanted man. His work is being recognized on a national level, as you might expect. And at least for right now, he still seems to be committed to the Big 12. I think he's a tough read, I think, on that as to, what his ultimate plans would be. He's certainly saying all the right things. If you go back to Big 12 media days, he had quotes along the lines of like, I'm not going to stop until we, are the best conference out there. I'm paraphrasing, but he was certainly projecting the energy of a guy who definitely wants to keep pushing and pushing this, but he's also somebody that's been in a bunch of different positions throughout his career and, doesn't strike me as necessarily a lifer there. So there might be a timetable on it at some point. I'm not saying you need to prepare yourself for the reality right now, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It is very similar to the conversation about your head coach. Iowa State fans, I know, go through it all the time with Matt Campbell because his name's been brought up for every job opening for about the last 6 years. K-State and Kansas fans found out this past offseason, whether it was Washington, Nebraska, I guess that's going back a couple of years, but you get the point. Though when Michigan popped open, both those names wound up on the list, even if everybody thought it was going to be Sherrone Moore. You have to always see it that your coach is going to come up for a quote unquote bigger and better job, but it's a testament to your program. That means you're enjoying more football throughout the season. Like things are going better. So your life as a sports fan following your team should be better if your coach, or in this case, your CEO, are being pursued like this. So at least take it like that. Brett Yormark, wanted by Live Golf. Could you see Brett Yormark as the commissioner of Live Golf? I guess I probably shouldn't speak too much on that because, like I said, I'm not a golf guy. I don't know a ton. I know it's like the rebel outpost league, right? I did feel like, well, that actually, I certainly feel like he makes more sense running Live Golf than he would the PGA Tour, right? Give Brett Yormark kind of the underdog sort of spin, or just something that is not like the total establishment thing. That doesn't seem like it would be something that would interest Yormark very much. Calico Willie, what's up, Calico Willie? Thanks for being here. Appreciate you, my friend. Calico Willie says, hey, John, been a minute. After half the season, what do you see the odds of the Big 12 in the playoff? After the early video, is there any chance the playoff poll adjusts for actual play? EMA. Well, thank you, Calico, for being here. Thank you for your support of the channel. I think the odds of, look, the Big 12 is going to get someone in the playoff. I think the odds of getting multiple teams in the playoff are just always going to be low unless we do get to a point where somebody could lose a close Big 12 championship game as an unbeaten and lose that to a one-loss team. That, I think, is your scenario, and probably the only real scenario where it happens. I would say, though, that as long as Iowa State and BYU keep winning, it does get slightly more and more likely. So if you are somebody that's rooting for that, you're definitely going to want to root for both of them to win their games this weekend. You will want to be rooting for Friday night BYU to take care of business in Provo. Big 12 after dark, another one of these late kickoffs, but BYU, you would want them to take care of business against Oklahoma State, and you want Iowa State to handle UCF. That's what you'd be rooting for if you're trying to get multiple Big 12 teams into the playoff. Is there any chance the playoff poll adjusts for actual play? Well, we don't. My apologies if I'm misunderstanding here, Calico. We don't actually have college football playoff rankings yet. We're getting close, though. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. I will say, for all the discussion now about like the AP poll, and I know I even discussed that a bit this week, like we still don't really know how the committee is going to judge this or handle this. And even the SEC and Big Ten, like with the reports coming out of that they may just do away with the committee entirely. They're clearly at least a little nervous about it, at least a little curious at worst about how this is going to go with the curious at best, maybe with how this is going to go with the selection committee. So, maybe it is going to be better for the Big 12. We'll see. We'll see how they value an Iowa State or a BYU. But thank you, Calico. Great to hear from you, my friend. Real quick, Big 12 TV numbers this week. I will wedge these in before I give you my Cam Rising take. Big 12 football week 7. K-State at Colorado, it was the 6th highest rated game of the weekend at 3.26 million. And that is in that after dark slot. So that's pretty impressive. Arizona at BYU was next. It got 1.31. Utah, Arizona State Friday, late night, got 1.29. And then Iowa State, West Virginia gets 1.22. Cincy at UCF, 280K. So it was kind of a light week with just the 5 Big 12 games, but that's what you had as far as viewership numbers. Nationally, as I said, that was good for 6th best overall, that Colorado K-State game. We know this. The Buffs continue to be good. I go back to what Mike Gundy said at Big 12 Media Days. Like, people pay attention to them. They bring TV eyeballs. And, so one observation that I had with this, right? Obviously, that's a good number for the league. You want to continue to see that happening. But with these late night windows, and I know as fans, like, we're already, I sense the general sentiment is that people are kind of tired of them. It also sucks because I do feel like you miss out a little bit, for whatever this is worth, on some of the major shows that are then recapping and reacting to games. Like, for instance, college football final. I always try to watch college football final on Sunday, and they're taping it late. The game is over, but they didn't have a highlight, at least that I saw, of Colorado K-State. And if it was there, I maybe missed the last 10 minutes of the show. So if it was there, it was late in the show. And so that's a game that, people cared about. It was a good game. It had a lot going on, even with a Travis Hunter injury, which you would think is something that they would want to be talking about and getting out there. You kind of missed the boat on that. So you are missing a bit of extra publicity that could go along with that. Even, how much this really matters in the grand scheme of things, I don't know. But I love the Solid Verbal. It's one of the biggest college football podcasts out there. You miss that, and then it's like, okay, we'll talk about it on our Tuesday show. And yeah, it gets mentioned a little bit, but by that point, it's blending in a bit too, moving forward to the next week. And it's just as easy to get kind of washed away in everything there if you are playing that late and having the game not be talked about as much. But I suppose you can't argue if you're getting over 3 million people to watch, because that's a really nice number for the Big 12 there. It's buzzer beater time. If you want to get something in right now, click the $ below the chat box to do so. Big 12 fans, if you want your Big 12 news without SEC or Big 10 bias straight to your inbox, 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week for totally free, $3.95. OFBnews.com is how you can subscribe to the Open for Business newsletter, OFBnews.com, or click the link in the description of this video. I appreciate all of you who do that. The biggest news in terms of a Big 12 player or Big 12 off the field news, I'll put it that way, this week is Cam Rising is out for the year. That has now been officially announced by Kyle Whittingham. No more song and dance this time. Now, obviously, Rising played. He had a pretty nasty, kind of got rolled up on in the game. That seemed to limit him even more. That now appears to have been a major issue enough to keep him out for the year. So I want to be really respectful to Rising because I feel terrible for him. But I do think this underscores a pretty uncomfortable truth for at least some Utah fans. Maybe not all, but for some Utah fans, I think this is an uncomfortable truth for Utah that has come to the forefront here. But look, for Rising, I mean, it's terrible that his last 2 seasons have gone like this. Last year, goes through the will he, won't he play, will he, won't he, until at a certain point they're like, nah, look, we just got to cut bait. It's not going to happen. All this happened. This stems from an injury in the Rose Bowl, which should be such a high, and then they don't win the game, and then there's such a long recovery, and that's a bummer. And Rising has been a great college player who won 2 Pac-12 championships. I was actually a Utah fan, had posted highlights of the win over USC from a couple of years ago. I believe that was the Utah Caleb Williams game. And just watching Rising play, I was like, man, he looked totally different because I just watched him go out there and try to play at Arizona State, but try is the operative word there. He just was not healthy at all and was moving so slow. And so watching a fully healthy Cam Rising running around was fun. He's a great player. And I don't say this to toot my own horn and, gloat about it, but I do remember saying in the offseason, there was all this talk about Jalen Daniels and his injury history, and can he stay healthy for a full season? But you didn't hear as much talk about Cam Rising. People were like, yeah, Rising's back. He's going to be good. Utah will be much better. And I remember saying, God, I feel like maybe there should be more talk about Rising when it's been 600 plus days since he actually played an entire football game. And unfortunately, that bore itself out. I mean, he comes in and plays a dominant half against Southern Utah in a game that they don't need him in the second half. And then game 2 against Baylor, I know it's kind of a weird fluky play on the sideline, but we've already got an injury again. So it leads to a couple weeks of wondering if he's going to play, wondering if he's not. And then by the time he comes back, not only does he get hurt again in the game, but he just didn't look like he had it. I mean, it just looked like things were really, really catching up to him. And at a certain point, the game will start to catch up to you like that. And the guy is in his 7th year in college football. And they're still talking about the 8th year. I mean, I saw Kyle Whittingham roll that out there like, hey, we don't know. It'll probably be something that has to be discussed. And I'm just thinking, I don't think that's in anybody's best interest, man. Like, Rising at this point, I would want a fresh start. Nothing against Utah at all. But if he is dead set on playing, right, I would think it's in both parties' best interest to just move on. Utah is going to play Isaac Wilson the rest of the year. He'll get valuable development. There's clearly talent there. You're not going to want to just blunt that by bringing Cam Rising back next year and then risk an Isaac Wilson transfer. I just don't think you could trust that if you're Utah. And if I'm Rising, I'm thinking, like, I need a fresh start. Let me go somewhere else and just see if a change of scenery helps anything out there at all. And if you doubt that he could get a spot, I mean, Tyler Shuck got a starting job at Louisville this year. He was in his 6th year of college football and was always hurt, oft injured throughout his career at Texas Tech and Oregon. He found a gig. I can imagine someone would be willing to take a flyer on Cam Rising if he did want to go somewhere else. That would be my suggestion if he really is dead set on doing that. He might not be, but if he really is. The problem here for Utah is, I think what has been exposed the last 2 years is that they are still a developmental type of program. And that is the same, by the way, for everybody else that they would fancy themselves better than in the Big 12, but like Oklahoma State, K-State, TCU, any of these schools that have had high levels of success in recent memory in the Big 12, it can be a little bit cyclical. Like, what I mean by developmental program, you got to hit your cycles. It's going to come in cycles when you can jump up and compete at the highest level, or at least the close to the highest level of the sport. For TCU, that was everything coming together in 2022. K-State has been like an 8-win team basically every year under Chris Kleiman, but there's only been 1 year where they jumped up, won double-digit games, and won the league. You got to hit the cycle right where everything's crescendoing for you to be able to do that. Now, can Utah be a program that hovers around 7 to 9 wins every year and then every couple of years has a chance to win 11? Yeah, absolutely. I just think that's the case also with Oklahoma State, K-State, TCU, if they can get the right coach in there. I think there are other programs that would really, really fit that bill, that can come close to winning at the highest levels of the sport, like as close as you realistically can in a non-SEC or Big Ten situation. But you're not going to be built enough to just do it year after year, especially because injuries happen. They're a part of the game of football, and Utah clearly does not have Cardale Jones lying around that they can just throw in and then go win a national championship. That's not what Utah is. And it really is striking and kind of funny, like how much it's just, they fit in much like many of these Big 12 schools do. Like it's very much a similar kind of position that they're in as a lot of these other schools in the league that some Utah fans, I will make the distinction, some have certainly like kind of thumbed their nose at upon entering this conference. So it's tough for everybody involved there. I definitely feel for Cam Rising. I wish him nothing but the best. If he is going to go play somewhere else, I'll be rooting for him. If not, if he's going to hang it up, I hope that he lives a great life and remembers a tremendous college football career. And I hope he made some decent NIL money along the way. If he comes back to Utah, I think you'd have some problems there, but I doubt that is going to happen. Alpha Cat wants to know, where does he get his Open for Business t-shirt? Oh man, maybe I can try and work on some merch. What do you guys want? Do you want just the regular logo that I have for it? Or do we need something fun? Like if someone wants to, I'm sure there's Photoshop experts. There are Photoshop experts out there listening to the show. If there is a Photoshop expert within the sound of my voice and you want to whip up something cool, or you want to whip up some sort of inside joke from the show, like something like that for merch, definitely hit me up on Twitter at JL Kurtz. You can do so. Appreciate the support, Alpha Cat. Colson, great interview with Jace. Which other wide receiver emerges? All right, well, Colson, got to give credit to Cole Manbeck and Derek Young for that. It's a reference to the 3-Maw podcast, the K-State podcast that I do with those two lovely gentlemen. And yes, they did interview Jace Brown, who had 120 yards receiving and a couple of touchdowns in Boulder on Saturday. I heard that Cole used the word Riz. I believe he told Jace Brown that he has Riz. Oh, Cole. So if that's not a great tease for you to go watch it, I don't know what is. Which other wide receiver emerges? Man, is one of the answers nobody? I don't know. I hope somebody does. You'd love for it to be Keegan Johnson, but he was pretty invisible at Colorado. It did sound like maybe he was a bit banged up, which has been the story of a lot of his career. Dante Cephas caught a pass against Travis Hunter very early on in the game, but then we didn't hear much from him. Trey Spivey had a drop. That was a little disappointing to see. They've been playing Ty Bowman some, who's a walk-on. I don't know. I guess the answer to that question is I don't know, but I hope it's Keegan Johnson. That's the best case scenario for the offense is if it is Keegan Johnson. So thank you, Colson. I appreciate you being here. Okay, I think that is going to wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Once again, if you are not subscribed to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com to do so, ofbnews.com, where you can click the link in the description of the video, get Big 12 news straight to your inbox. No Big 10 or SEC crap. I'm cutting through all that for you. ofbnews.com to get signed up. Like the video on your way out the door. That would be amazing as well. Appreciate everybody there. Spread this far and wide, the show, the newsletter, everything. Any of your friends who are Big 12 fans or fans of your school and you think they'd be interested, or just college football fans in general. Do not want to limit this to just Big 12 fans, right? So, yeah, thank you guys. Love all of you. Thanks to everybody who contributed. Thanks to everybody who was just here. Thanks to you for being you. Enjoy the rest of your week. Watch out for the power rankings in Open for Business tomorrow, ofbnews.com. If you want to get those, I got Big 12 power rankings dropping tomorrow morning. And yeah, I will talk to you all soon. Enjoy the weekend of college football.